Department of Energy received, I think it was close to $37 billion under the Recovery Act. And from those dollars, our office, the Office of Electricity Delivery and Energy Reliability, received $4.5 billion. And they received those dollars to implement the smart grid. And roughly $3.4 billion was used for smart grid implementation and projects for smart grid. And some of the remaining dollars were distributed across our office. And of those dollars, we were really lucky, and we received money for state and local governments to do energy assurance planning. And so states received roughly $38 million, and then we have a local government effort, which is around $10 million. And of course, all of this the main objective is to help states and local governments strengthen their planning efforts and give them the capability to respond to an energy emergency. And they already do that. And we've already been working with them at a sort of a grassroots level over the years. But this was an opportunity to treat this more as a national level program. So we are on our way. And I don't want to go through a lot of the details of it, so I'm just going to show you a couple of places on our website where you can get information. One of them is OE's website, and all the projects that OE received and has implemented are listed there. So it's at oe.energy.gov. But there is something going on our website, so when you go to DOE's website, or if you type in oe.energy.gov, recently you go to DOE's website. So if you get to DOE's website, just go down the left-hand side, find our office, and then drive around there, and there's a Recovery Act page. This is another useful website, and it lists all the Recovery Act projects that DOE is doing. So if you go to a particular state like West Virginia, right, Bill? And we have a number of states here today that are part of our state energy assurance planning activity. But if you were to type in West Virginia, there'd be a whole list of all kinds of projects that are going on in West Virginia, including the State Energy Assurance Planning Initiative. So this is very useful. So there's a lot of information you can find there. On the local side, not all cities or local governments receive dollars. They had to submit proposals for the roughly $10 million that was available. So in the end, we received a number of proposals, and we selected 43 cities across the United States. So we've got a whole range of cities. There are 43 of them that represent about 15 million citizens across the country. And we've got 7 cities that are 500,000 population, or 500,000 or more population. 16 cities that are in the 100 to 500,000 range. 13 that are 25,000 to 100,000, and 7 that have a population of 25,000 or less. And we have a tiny little city in Michigan called Mayville, and they're part of it, and we think that's really neat. And we also got Haley, Idaho as well. So we've got a nice distribution of cities, and what's really neat about this is some of them are capital cities. So we are doing a lot of work with the capital cities in those states, and the sort of the coordination between the cities and the states is very unique with respect to energy assurance planning. Before I turn it over to Jeff, when we got the project and everyone got their money, we sat down and we figured out an implementation strategy, because we thought this was really a good thing to do with respect to where we were going to get to at the very end. So we came up with 6 major activities, and the first is, of course, to hear from states and cities about what their Recovery Act requirements are so that we could better support them. We also are providing them education and training, and we're also working with them to help build and foster partnerships throughout all levels of government and, of course, with industry. And we think that's a very good thing to do, particularly when you're having to respond to an energy emergency. We are currently developing tools, templates, frameworks for them to use in creating their plans and providing them resource materials. And also, we've been hosting a number of webinars and conference calls. So we are very busy. We're very active with the states. And, of course, in a second, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and he's going to tell you what some of those activities are. Then at the end, we're going to try to capture all those lessons learned, best practices, and share that back with the states. And we do this through a website that we have that all the states are a member of currently. And so when we're finished, what are we going to have? We're going to have a uniform, comprehensive energy assurance and resilience approach, which we've never had in the past, and this will be at the national level. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and he's going to tell you some of the things that we're working on, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. Thanks.
Well, as Alice said, we've been working to provide technical support to states, and that's run a gamut of different things. Two of the principal things that we've developed early on were the state energy assurance guidelines, and through the Public Technologies Institutes, they developed a set of guidelines for local governments to use. And these are really valuable guides because they don't say insert your state's name here. They tell you what elements you should consider in your planning processes. States differ considerably. I mean, the needs of Wyoming and the needs of Texas are quite different. So they have to develop plans that reflect an understanding of their energy infrastructure, the risk and vulnerabilities that they have, and really structure those plans to meet the needs of their state. That's an important aspect of what we're trying to encourage. What we did to help that is develop a framework. And this is almost like an outline for what could go in an energy assurance plan. An executive summary. What's the purpose of the plan? What are the roles and responsibilities of different state agencies? What are your emergency communication procedures? Have you thought about these kinds of things? Important things to consider. Now, maybe not every state's going to do all of these particular items, but these are some of the things to, give some due consideration to in the planning process itself. Currently, states are working on the phase where they have to develop their first round of updated or new plans. Those plans are going to be due in February of next year, so they're really right in the middle of that planning phase right now. We do expect that they would catalog and identify what their responses would be to events that might impact natural gas, electricity, and petroleum products, to take a look at what impacts the advent of new technologies, biodiesel, ethanol, wind, solar, how are we integrating these things? These new technologies, new capabilities do help diversify our energy supplies, do give us greater security, but they also come with other new challenges. They create new issues that I think one has to be aware of. Also, and very importantly, is the linkages to what other state plans are, to what the local plans are, working with the local communities, understanding where the state's response really kind of picks up at that point where the private sector, the private energy sector, really needs the state to come in and help. Now, with an event like a hurricane, obviously the state's going to become involved. In smaller events, the state may only be monitoring the events and not necessarily have to take any action. But, things happen. Recently, this past week, the governor of Iowa declared an energy emergency in order to implement driver hour waivers because of restrictions in propane supplies necessary for crop drying. So here's an action they took to help facilitate the movement of fuel. Another aspect of this is really sort of the longer-term perspective. It's one thing to say, okay, something's tragically gone wrong, our energy supplies have been impacted, but what can you do in the longer term to reduce the risk and vulnerability? And this really kind of ties in and has linkages to the National Infrastructure Protection Plan and the Energy Sector-Specific Plan, which in its new version is going to really reflect this energy assurance initiative we have going. So what are states doing in that regard? Well, things that they do to diversify their supply, to assure that energy is being used more efficiently, that there's new infrastructure replacing the old aged infrastructure, that you enhance the reliability, smart grid, the potential security and reliability benefits of smart grids and integration of renewables is another thing that can build the resiliency of our overall energy sector. So, kind of looking at those kinds of things is how you implement, how do you direct your energy policies in a way that have this broader types of impact so that you really reduce the frequency of potential outages, or if they do occur, that you're able to recover from them much more quickly. Multi-state coordination is something we've been strongly encouraging. This year we will have held 4 rounds of regional conference calls. We kind of broke the nation up into 6 regions, so we've been doing 6 calls, and there's been 4 rounds of those to encourage states to have dialogue on what their plans are, because those plans need to be coordinated. in a state that's serviced by a major oil company that's operating in multiple states in that region. If states take wildly different approaches to this, their ability to implement those contingency measures will be much less effective than if they are coordinated. Things in the electric power area, like the independent system operators, like MISO and PJM, that cross multiple state lines, there certainly needs to be coordination with those policies and programs. One of the key things that we've really encouraged states to do in responding to emergencies is the Energy Emergency Assurance Coordinator Program, where in every state there's been an individual that's been designated to be the point of contact for the Department of Energy and for other states to be the person that you can go to find out what's going on in that state, to serve as a resource so that you can get good information about what's happening. It's important that states have the ability to assess and understand the implication of a supply disruption, its consequence, and its potential duration. So this is part of the assessment capability that has also been part of our overall energy assurance program. To give you a sense of some of the things that have been done over the years, lots of stuff. These are initiatives that have been undertaken by NASIO, the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, Department of Energy. Some have been sponsored by DHS or through FEMA in exercises. But many, many activities have been initiated over the years to try to build this capability. And with the funding that we have in this 3-year program now, it's going to really allow for a much more comprehensive, well-developed approach for states to take, to coordinate with the locals, to coordinate with their states within their region, and to really look at how they can best intersect and support the private sector. What I've often said to the private sector is my real job is to make certain that I never have the meeting where I have to come into the room and say, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. I really want them to solve their problems so that, the state doesn't have to get involved. That's really the ideal. But there are events, there are tornadoes, there are hurricanes, there are bad things that do happen and where state resources can be beneficial in facilitating the recovery. Some of the technical supports we've been working on, as Alice mentioned earlier, is we've done webinars, we've done training for the energy assurance coordinators, we've been looking at geographic information systems that can be really helpful. This workshop is really another piece of that outreach that we're engaged in. We also did a summer fuels outlook and a data workshop. DOE is publishing quarterly energy assurance bulletins, and we've been working to make certain that we get out in front of the NASIO meetings and the NARUC meetings and other opportunities to educate people on the importance of this work. We've also got some pretty good websites. Both NASIO has tried to coalesce all the information we have on energy assurance on our NASIO.org energy assurance page, and PTI for local governments has created a energyassurance.us page where they've consolidated the information for local governments. Some of the things that we have upcoming is in February, when the state's first round of planning is to be completed, is going to be followed by 4 multi-state regional energy emergency exercises that are planned for next year. We're going to try to stagger those over the course of the year. These are the regions we're tentatively working off to schedule those, and there'll be really good opportunities for states to bring their plans to the table and to gauge their effectiveness against scenarios that we're going to present with them and try to see where there's potentially disconnects. Some things won't work really well, but that's what these exercises are for. And following these exercises, we hope that states will then be able to go back and provide further refinements to their plans and really try to fill gaps that those exercises then resulted in. They also are going to be doing some exercises within their own state as a requirements of the grant. So they'll be doing some tabletop exercises, and we've certainly encouraged the states to work with their local partners in the private sector and the energy sector to be involved in those exercises. We're going to do a series of webinars. These are some of the topics that have been suggested to look at some of the different things that can be done really related to the planning phase right now. And again, as I've kind of emphasized, this whole business of really trying to have a more coordinated approach overall. The last thing I'd like to just touch on, because this is a new area, and we heard our lunch speaker, Bobby Brown, talk about this cybersecurity dimension, smart grid. Smart grid can really go a long way to making the power grid more resilient and more reliable. But it comes at a cost, and that cost is making certain that proper attention is paid to the cybersecurity issues. Cybersecurity is an area that state energy agencies, including public utility commissions and state energy offices, really have not had much of a focus on in the past. And so we are working on a paper to try to better educate state officials with regards to how they can begin to understand what these issues are, that they can ask the right questions, not necessarily become cybersecurity experts in their own right, but at least to have a level of awareness and understanding that these are important considerations that have to be addressed. So we'll probably do a webinar on this subject as well, because the smart grid can really go a long way to realizing some efficiency gains and diversification of the power system, and has some real benefits to it, but we have to address the cybersecurity issues.